Wisp Sports Radio, the voice of women in sport.
Kia ora, I'm Zoe George and welcome to the May episode of Fair Play, a podcast covering women in sport, from athletes and results to current affairs and issues. This podcast is made in association with Wisp Sports and RNZ and The Locker Room. If you're into podcasts as much as we are, check out RNZ for politics, crime and lifestyle podcasts. And if you want your sports injection, check out Wisp Sports and Locker Room for everything to do with women in sport. This month, I sit down for a one-on-one with former New Zealand Prime Minister Right Honourable Helen Clark to discuss her favourite sport, what we need to do to improve coverage of women in sport, and how we lean in to encourage more women in leadership roles. We hear from some of the attendees of the recent International Work Group Captains Luncheon about the big challenges facing women and girls today. We catch up with paraclimber Rachel Maia about her recovery following her amputation. And of course, it's not fair play without an update from the toilets at the Basin Reserve. Today's guest co-host is Susanne McFadden from Locker Room. Kia ora, Susanne. It's always lovely to have you on the show.
Kia ora, Zoe. It's lovely to be here.
And I'm so pleased that we've been able to join in partnership with Fair Play. It's very exciting.
Locker Room is thrilled to be part of the Fair Play podcast. We really, really admire what you've done with it, and we're looking forward to working together with you to make it even better.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you so much. And I'm so pleased and that we get to join together because, you know, you at Locker Room have been doing some incredible things to help promote women in sport in Aotearoa. So it's a beautiful partnership.
It sure is.
And what have you been up to?
On a personal front, a personal sporting front, not that I've been doing any great sporting things myself, but I watched my eldest son run his first marathon at the Rotorua Marathon next to my husband, who's done many marathons. But it was a really lovely thing to see the two of them running together.
Oh, how many marathons have you done?
Well, I have stood on the sideline of many, many marathons and ultramarathons, Zoe, and I think I deserve a little medal for that in its own. No, I'm not a runner, and in fact, the only time that I went for a run with my husband, I came out in a rash, so I'm actually allergic to running.
I like that excuse. I think I might try that. I was cycling for a bit, but I think I might be allergic to cycling as well now.
No, we've just got to watch sport and comment on sport and help sport that way. That's our contribution.
Absolutely. You know, we all play our roles in helping develop coverage for women in sport, and standing on the sideline and being a supporter is just as important as participation.
It sure is. And I went to the Voyager New Zealand Media Awards.
Oh, yes.
Where the Sports Journalist of the Year award was won by Dana Johansson of The Stuff for the second year running. So
fantastic.
That's fantastic to see.
She is a wonderful sports journalist, and actually it's about time we get her back on Fair Play, so maybe we might have to call her up for the next episode. What major stories have you covered recently?
Well, we've done a real variety of sports, as Locker Roomers want to do. One of my favourite stories that we've done in the last month is actually about running. And it was on Katie Wright, the Nelson doctor who became the first woman in the world to win a backyard ultra marathon. And it's a crazy, crazy event where there's a start line but no finish line. So it's you run a 6.7 kilometre lap and you have to finish it within an hour, and then on the hour the next lap starts again. So if you don't finish it, you're eliminated, and it's the last person standing. And she beat a field of 57 other runners, I believe, most of them men. So
wow,
really cool. You know, being a doctor, Katie kind of says, you know, because she ran 201 kilometres non-stop for 30 hours, which is amazing.
How do you, what toll does that take on your body?
Yeah, well, she said that, really interesting, that women's bodies are made better for endurance events. And, you know, we are able to withstand a lot of pain and labour and child labour. And so, you know, that's, for some reason, biologically, women are better at endurance events.
Huh. Well, there you go. We'll have to check out that story on Locker Room. And I also spotted you at the International Work Group Women in Sport and Trans-Pacific Business Circle's Luncheon recently. We were both there, which was lovely.
It was. It was always lovely to go out for a nice lunch midweek.
And to be surrounded by not just women but men as well who are bringing up the voices of others in sport. It's so refreshing to be surrounded by people like that.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, the fact that there was a kind of a waiting list to get to that luncheon and the support for women in sport was outstanding to see.
And there were so many big names, Beatrice Famawina, there were netballers, there were footballers, there were people from all different levels of sport and rec as well, there were business people, so it was such a fantastic opportunity to actually talk about the inequalities that women and girls face in sport.
Yeah, I was really pleased to see how many leaders in women's sport there were, female leaders. That has been an area of concern for so long, but to see more women taking on those roles is really heartening.
It is good. And actually research by Sport New Zealand shows, interestingly, that 73% of directors of sport organisations are men, 60% in leadership roles are men, and 70% of high-performance coaches are men. So it was fantastic to see all these different women at all different levels of sports governance and leadership, athletes to CEOs, come out to talk about it. And also one of the things that we'll discuss shortly was media coverage as well, because the media play a huge role in covering sport, and that's part of who we are, isn't it?
Yes, that's our job.
It's our job.
Yeah.
In 2018, the government launched a $10 million strategy to help grow leadership, participation, value and visibility of women in sport. And actually amongst the luncheon attendees and panellists discussing the bigger issues was former New Zealand Prime Minister Helen Clark. She is a formidable leader. She was the 5th longest serving Prime Minister of this country, and after spending 9 years as leader, she went on to become the first female to hold the top job with the United Nations Development Programme, making her the most powerful woman at the organisation. She also ran for Secretary-General of the United Nations, and although unsuccessful in that bid, her influence continued to spread far and wide. She's also a regular on Forbes' most influential lists. One day, Susanne will get there. In 2016, she reached number 22 on the list of influential women. Over the years, she's also been recognised with major awards, including a Peace Prize for her work on nuclear disarmament in the 1980s. In the 90s, she was awarded with the New Zealand Suffrage Centennial Medal. While in government in the noughties, she was recognised with the UN Environment Programme Champions of the Earth Award for Sustainable Initiatives. And in 2017, she was given a Lifetime Achievement Award at the New Zealand Women of Influence Awards. Most recently, she was named as patron of the International Work Group Women in Sport Aotearoa, and I had the pleasure of chatting to her about sport, leadership, and what the media need to do to step up its sports coverage. Kia ora, Right Honourable Helen Clark.
Kia ora.
Welcome to Fair Play. When I started talking to people about how I was going to interview you for Fair Play, the sports podcast, they said, I didn't realise Helen Clark was into sport, but you are. You were heavily involved in sport. I mean, how did you manage to get into cross-country skiing?
Well, I've been involved in sport for a great deal of my life. Obviously, as a child, you played tennis. We had a grass court marked out on our farm. I played netball. I played a bit of softball in summer at Epsom Girls Grammar. But like a lot of women, when I left school and didn't have to do it, I didn't do formal sport anymore. And it wasn't until I was 41 and
still young,
first year in opposition, after being in government for 3 years, that I decided I'm going to change this. So I then got into cross-country skiing and never looked back, and then took up a lot more formal hiking and doing great walks and just keeping fit, because with exercise, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yes.
So you have to work at keeping
very
fit.
True.
And there's a point at your life when if you haven't kept active, you won't be able to do the things you thought you could.
That's very true. How often are you out skiing and hiking and walking these days?
Well, because I spend quite a bit of time at Waihi Beach, where my dad has been for a lot of years.
Beautiful.
I have done a lot of walking, not just on the beach, but around the hill walks and the Karangahaki area. So I do a lot of walking. Skiing, I like to have my week in the Southern Alps every August. If I can get down for other weekends, that's good. If I can get in a little bit in the Northern Hemisphere when I'm travelling, I like that. When I was in New York, the cross-country ski fields of the Northeast were relatively close, so I did a lot of cross-country skiing
I can
while
imagine.
I was there.
Today we've been talking about leadership, women in sport. For you, what is the number one biggest challenge facing women in sport right now in New Zealand?
It's the lack of investment in the women's sports, which gives them the chance to be as visible as the men's sports. It's also the absence of women on the governing bodies, which is why it's important that the government strategy on women in sport is targeting the 40% membership. It's also targeting the sports managers, team managers, it's targeting the coaches. It's really saying at every level, from the grassroots participation through the levels of administration or responsibility, we want women visible.
One of those aspects, though, as well, about making women visible is through media. When it comes to media organisations, for example, that are publicly broadcasted, public broadcasters like RNZ and TVNZ, what role do we actually play in ensuring that we get those numbers up? Because it's under our charter, right?
Yes, I think the public sector broadcasters could play a lead role. It's going to need leadership from their chief executives, from their sports editors, of course diversifying the journalism pool, making sure there's plenty of women's sports journalists as well is critical. I think it always gets noticed when the public broadcasters and other broadcasters bring in former senior New Zealand women representatives into presenting and being sports journalists, so that gives it a boost. But the public sector could lead the way, as it is on board appointments and in parliamentary representation, and of course at the level of women PMs. It's really time now for other sectors to step up.
It's fascinating looking at the number of females within sports newsrooms, particularly in public broadcasters, and there is a lack of diversity, not only just with women and gender, but also ethnicity in that. How do we try and encourage them to step up a bit more?
I think the broadcasters need to reflect on what is the potential for their audience. Do they want women listeners and watchers? Because if they do, then maybe, bringing in more content around women in sport would be very helpful to that. I think there's also a message to the advertisers. That doesn't apply to Radio New Zealand, but everybody else takes advertising. Ensuring that advertisers are aware of the potential of the women's market to be, got interested through sports sponsorship, that will be useful.
Right, Honourable Helen Clark is our guest today on Fair Play. Leadership is something that, you're the pinnacle when it comes to leadership for women in New Zealand. What fights have you had to fight to get there?
What I worked out a very long time ago was that no one opened the door and said, Helen, come on in, it's yours, right? You had to fight every step of the way. And that's going to be the case with all these causes, for gender equality in general, for women in sport or whatever. We have to push for it because no one else is going to. You have to get in and make your luck and hustle, and, if at first you don't succeed, try again. I learnt the importance of perseverance and great resilience, because if you're trying to push in where women haven't traditionally been, there will be pushback, and you have to be resilient to that.
And that's what's happening at the moment in the sports area here. There are a number of women pushing in, and actually they're starting to make a bit of leeway there, and it's only a matter of time before it changes. What advice would you have for women, not only in sport, but in general, who want to kick in those doors and be like, right, I'm here I am?
The key thing is to build alliances, because you can't do it on your own. Even if you're the person that's going for the position, you have to have a team behind you. That team should be women and men. Very important to have male supporters as well. So put a lot of emphasis on getting that team around you that shares your objectives and wants to see you succeed.
Do you watch a lot of sport on television or listen to sports coverage or Do you engage with it? I guess you don't have a lot of time, do
no,
you?
I do. If I think of a Saturday night at my dad's in Waihi Beach, he'll like to watch a game of the rugby. So
Nice.
you'd be amazed how much I see, actually. And I love tennis. I used to play tennis myself a lot when I was younger. I love seeing the international ski jumps, for example. So, yeah, I mean, I think sport is great television. And let's see more of the women in sport as great television.
I completely agree. And so where to for you next? What are you up to? Because, you've done your UN thing and that was amazing to see you on that world stage. Having a New Zealand woman up there is incredible. You're kind of all over the show, aren't you?
Yes, I am focusing on the global platform. I do become patron of a number of things in New Zealand, but I am focusing my activities on causes I'm passionate about offshore. I'll be picking up the presidency of something called the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative shortly, and that's about getting transparency about contracts and revenues from the extractives industries because they can be sources of great corruption if the rules aren't right around that. So that's quite a large multi-country initiative which has the NGOs involved and also industry groups, so that will take a bit of time, but I do a lot of things like that.
Former New Zealand Prime Minister and current patron of the international work group Women in Sport Aotearoa, Right Honourable Helen Clark. Our co-host today is Susanne McFadden from a locker room. Interesting, Susanne, about how she was saying media, in particular publicly funded media organisations, need to step up their game. For you, what's been the biggest challenges you've faced with setting up the likes of locker room?
The biggest challenge for us has been not getting people to read because there is definitely an audience out there. But perhaps the most difficult part of it has been financial, actually. Newsroom's an independent news website and we run on a really different funding model than other news organisations. So when we decided to launch Locker Room just over a year ago, we thought we'd have no trouble getting sponsorship to help run it. Women's sport is on a high right now. We thought we couldn't go wrong, but we were wrong. And no corporate has wanted to help us out. And that really took us by surprise.
That's quite fascinating, particularly when you get big organisations like ANZ sponsoring the netball, for example.
Yeah, it was really interesting hearing someone talk about netball today and, how some of the franchises in the ANZ Premiership don't have sponsorship, don't have sponsors' names in front of their names anymore. 10 years ago, they all had a sponsor. It's changing. But it's funny, isn't it? Because we think that netball is probably the best off sport financially out there. And if that's the case, then how are other women's sports getting by?
Yes, it's a very interesting question. And I think it's why, the government has put this strategy in place about, around wellness and equality for women and girls in sport. $10 million over 3 years. It's a good start.
Yeah.
Could be, bring more, please. There's, regarding the media as well, there's also this argument that mainstream media won't cover women in sport because the audience isn't interested. But the audience isn't interested because the media don't cover it. So where's this balance here?
Yeah, it's a bit of a catch-22 situation, isn't it? But except I can see a starting point here, and that's run the stories on women's sport. And the audience, will read it. We've had no trouble getting readers, male and female, to Locker Room stories. And there is a definite want for interesting stories on interesting women in sport and the issues that they face. So, how will anybody go to watch the Black Ferns playing at Eden Park if they don't know that the game's on? And the media has a responsibility to cover sport fairly. But I also think it has a lot to do with who's making the decisions. You walk into a newsroom around the country and you'll be lucky to see more than one woman in a sports department. Probably TVNZ News at the moment is an exception to that rule. But you know that there won't be a woman in charge in those sports departments. And we need more women sports reporters in the system who will move up to hold those positions and make those important decisions.
Yeah, women in leadership, and that's something that Helen Clark talked about as well, and the fights that we face to get there. There was a really interesting article in Forbes today that say that women who support women are more successful. So hopefully that shines good for us, Susanne.
Absolutely, I totally agree. I think we're going to be held up as examples of that, Zoe.
I hope
you and
so.
me working together.
Yes. So more than 200 people from sport and business attended this luncheon. I managed to snag a few of the attendees to get their views on the biggest challenges facing women and girls in sport today. Kerry Manders, hello, Netball New Zealand. What's the biggest issue facing Netball New Zealand right now?
I think it's visibility too, to be honest. We've got a good place in the media landscape, but when you compare it to a rugby or a cricket and those types of ones, then again we've still got a lot of room to move. And we have a lot of netball product that's out there, so there's lots of games you can watch and play, but it's been making sure that we're getting the recognition of that to that same level, I think.
What's the biggest challenge facing women in sport today?
I guess juggling responsibilities. Women in sport often aren't fully professional, so probably juggling that and work and home.
For me, I find that sort of pay equity stuff really confronting, that women don't earn the same as men in sport, and the fairness of that, and so I would say, not being a sports person myself, but I would say that's a clear issue.
I think that getting women into realising that we've got reasonably high participation numbers, not equal but quite good, certainly very good at Olympic level. Over the last Olympic cycles. Now transferring that into getting women into leadership and decision-making positions so that we can influence what's happening for next generations is where I think the biggest challenge is.
Hello, Erica from Yachting New Zealand. What's the biggest challenge facing women in your sport right now?
For us, I think it's quite like a cultural barrier. There's a lot of work to go within getting a stronger female culture within New Zealand sailing. Mm-hmm. There's quite a big drop-off point when girls finish high school and they move away out of uni and kind of lose their parents' support. So that's a big barrier. Yeah, there's a lot, but we're working on them, and it's a really exciting time for women in sailing.
Hello, Gabby Sport Waikato, lovely to see you. What's the biggest issue facing sport in regions in New Zealand right now?
I think one of the biggest areas is getting fair and equal participation across men and women in all ages, and ensuring that facilities are open and accessible to everybody.
Jeanette, Cycling New Zealand. Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Zoe. For your organisation, Cycling New Zealand, what's the biggest issue facing Cycling New Zealand right now?
I think it's around capability in the regions and the community aspect. Cycling is very much around a community-based sport, and I think it's just ensuring that we've got that capability in the community to drive things upwards through to high performance.
Kia ora, Holly from New Zealand Football.
Kia ora, Zoe.
So what's the biggest issue facing women in sport right now?
Well, there's so many issues, or so many areas that we need to address, but I think probably the biggest issue is that leadership piece. So, for example, at governance level, how can we ensure that there's diversity within that decision-making circle? And I think if we can have that diversity in the governance space, then that trickles down right to the grassroots within the club space. I think people up the top kind of have to take that lead and influence and show the rest of New Zealand or the rest of the world that we're practicing what we preach type thing. I am a footballer through and through, but I do enjoy and support watching other women in sport, which I think is probably one of the other issues. I don't think enough women support women's sport.
Very interesting food for thought there. That was some of the attendees of the luncheon that we attended a couple of weeks ago. Susanne McFadden. Kind of interesting, some of the topics there, visibility, but one was about having it all, having a family, having an international sports career, having a normal day job, the lot. Is it possible to have it all and make it work?
I think that women athletes have been doing that for a long time and showing that it can be done. I respect women who can do that, and I do believe if they have a better life balance, that they are better people on and off the field. We've seen in the past that, women who have children sometimes come back stronger, that thing that we were talking about before with endurance. But it must be very hard at the same time to see their male equivalents being paid to be able to do this full time. Yeah, I still really appreciate the whole life balance thing, and I believe it makes them better people, better athletes, better role models.
Yeah, well, you just have to look at the current New Zealand Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern. She's leading a country, she has a family, she seems to be able to do it all.
Yeah, I want to see her playing for the Black Ferns, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, then...
Yeah. What position would she play?
Oh, she's definitely first five. She makes all the decisions.
She does. One person who has it all is our guest from last month's episode, paraclimber Rachel Maia. We followed her as she had her left leg amputated just below the knee. Well, Rachel is back on the wall, and while juggling her family, 3 kids, one of whom she says has the superpower of autism, and her recovery as well, she's back scaling to great heights, and she's actually just competed at the Nationals. I caught up with her earlier. Hello, Rachel Maia. It's so lovely to have you back on Fair Play.
Hi, Zoe.
Last month, we did the story about your amputation, and I tell you what, people have just been incredible. What kind of response have you had to the story?
Look, it's always so humbling to have so many positive comments and all that encouraging feedback, and there's been a lot of that. And I guess in particular when you're being a bit vulnerable and letting somebody record you in hospital while you might be a little bit dozied and not quite all there. It's nice just to hear that people can connect to that journey and to the idea of struggle and trying to be resilient through that. So it's been positive.
And how's your recovery going?
Recovery is as recovery always is, and that's been up and down and full of extra challenges and health setbacks and frustrations, but trying to stay really positive. I think on the whole I'm definitely ahead of perhaps where the benchmark might be for me post-op, so that's encouraging. But obviously I'm the type of person that really wants to get right in there, so just like anybody else, there's the normal frustrations and setbacks and trying to stay positive.
And how is your family adjusting to it all?
Oh, they're amazing. I have the best 3 kids on the planet. I know every mum thinks that, but they're really, really beautiful kids, and they're just so upbeat about it. If it's a tough day and I'm not moving around a lot, they readjust, they recalculate what they're expecting of mum. They're very capable of getting on with things. My eldest son will slap some omelettes on the table if we need to, and they all muck in and get stuck into it, so that's pretty cool. And they're all so excited about the next 8 weeks and the journey to Worlds and coming back from Nationals, and it's just so nice to come home and have your kids really proud of you and to feel like as a mum that that you're giving them something more than just getting through each day, that you're modelling, I guess, that resilience and goal setting and overcoming fears, because as we've discussed before, I'm still a little afraid of heights. But yeah, it's nice to see that they're learning so much through this process as well. And yeah, we're a pretty tight wee group.
Oh, that's beautiful. And you're back on the wall already, which is incredible. You had Nationals just this weekend, just gone, is that right?
I did. I barely made it, actually. I was back in the gym 19 days after the surgery training. And that was really good for, I guess, mental health and well-being following a major op. And I took up a boxing class, which was really fun. So I'm sitting in a wheelchair having a good punching bag. That felt good. And then I did crash with a little bit of a chest infection. And so there were those discussions with the doctor as to whether Nationals was a reasonable expectation of myself. In the end, it came down to him saying, look, if you think you can, then okay, but this is a little touch and go. And I did get there, and I'm really thankful I did, because just being amongst that vibe and my climbing family for me, that's always been the first reason to climb. It's the people, it's the people, it's the people. And I was so thankful to be there and absolutely loved it. It was come off on a high.
But also you had a bit of drama as you were just about to take to the wall.
Yes. I've learned a very valuable lesson that in particular, if you only have 5 toes, you should probably protect them with your life. So I made the error of doing one last quick trip to go and deal with something right before the climb. So I was barefoot because I was about to climb, and then I damaged a toe just before I got on the wall, so lifted the nail all the way up to the base, and that started bleeding and my legs started shaking and it was all very painful, and someone ran and got my coach and we basically just taped it down and shoved my foot back in the shoe and got on the wall. So I was climbing very gingerly for my last 2 climbs, and I can't say that was comfortable, but my mistake. I should have been wearing shoes, and good to learn that lesson now and not in front.
Yes. So Worlds are coming up.
We're wearing our shoe.
Wear our shoe. Well, yeah, wear a shoe. Worlds are coming up in France in July. How's the preparation for that going?
I think the toughest part of the preparation is that physically I'm obviously not able to push myself the way I would like to, and so mentally I need to be stronger. And in any sport, it's often the mental strength that you're developing and that resilience that gets you through. You can put all the training in that you like, but if you have an off day on the day and your head's not in the right space, then all of that training is going to be sort of for a loss. So, yeah, I'm staying really positive. I'm putting in as much training as I can, but I'm being reasonable with what I can put my body through as far as stress and strain goes, and just staying focused on that goal. So I just need to get there. I need to show up, and then in that moment on the wall, when I'm there, I need to be as present as possible, and I think we need to be as gracious and as proud of our bodies as we can and what we expect of ourselves, and just enjoy the moment, and that's what's hopefully going to bring the results at the end of the day.
Paraclimber Rachel Maia. And regarding the Nationals, she came away with the gold. So
fantastic.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't she incredible? She's also set up a Give a Little page to help her get to Worlds. You can find it on her Instagram at Rachel Maia NZ. And a t-shirt company, which is called Badass Apparel, have actually designed a t-shirt, and $20 from each shirt goes to Rachel's Road to the Worlds, which is incredible. I want one of those t-shirts, I think.
I'm going to order mine now.
Before we head off, it's not fair play without an update from the toilets at the Basin Reserve.
Awesome. You are awesome on this subject.
Oh, thanks. Last month we heard how the negotiations for tender process is still ongoing, and the Wellington City Council will not be installing a fully inclusive facility like the ones we spoke about in the March episode of Fair Play. The toilets that we talked about include height-adjustable toilets and hand basins, hoists, full change tables and showers, and are located at the Hamilton Gardens, and actually a number of local councils and businesses have picked them up as well. The latest is that the Wellington City Council should have the tender negotiations finished by the end of May. So we'll be very interested to see what comes out of that. Now, I did ask about the consultation of other groups, and in particular the LGBTQI plus community. The council says they don't generally consult with community groups when installing toilets at council facilities, but they may consult if necessary. We'll bring you an update in June. This is
Look forward to hearing what they've decided, what the tender process comes up with.
Yes, absolutely. I'm fascinated, and the design of it as well. We talk about the Basin Reserve being one of the best cricket grounds in New Zealand. So if we want to make it the best cricket ground, then we need to cater for everyone who goes there. And sport should be accessible to all, not just some. And having toilet facilities is a good way to do it, I think.
Yeah, and they should be setting example for all sports grounds in New Zealand.
Absolutely, and this is the chance. And plus we've got the Women's World Cup cricket coming in 2021, and I think they should have the final at the Basin Reserve. So, if it's meant to be our best cricket ground in the country, then the final should be there. So why not cater for the toilets and make it best practice? maybe.
I feel another Zoe George crusade coming on.
Bring it. And that's it for this issue of Fair Play. What are you doing through June, Suzanne? Anything
Sounds
exciting?
like I'll be watching a lot of sport.
You and me both. I'll be getting up at the crack of dawn. Actually, I'll be getting up at midnight to watch the cricket, or Not Your Average Cricket Show. So that will be me. And I'll be following the football ferns as well, which will be fantastic. Thank you so much, Suzanne, for being part of today's show. And
Thank you, Zoe. And thank you for making this partnership possible.
Oh, thanks. And also a big thank you so much to Right Honourable Helen Clark, the attendees of the Women in Sports Lunch, and paraclimber Rachel Maia.
Conversations from the world of women's sports. This is Wisp Sports Radio.
You can follow all the action at Locker Room, at RNZ and at Wisp Sports, and you can find us on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Zoe George. Don't forget to play hard, but play fair.